Halloween's getting closer and I know all of you love to get that perfect blood splatter. So here's how you do it. I've got a little key on my left of the colours I'm going to use, and this really helps to sort it out. Here's the RGB values if you want to copy exactly what I have here. But you just need a light red and a dark red and then white at the bottom, but that's fine, that's easy. Now your light red is your base colour, so you're always going to have to start off with your lighter colour. On 100 we want a nice block colour. So I duplicate my background layer just so I'm not working straight on background, I don't like doing that. And just draw like a big red cloud basically. This is just the start of your blood splatter. And you can alter the shape after, it's just so we have something down. Now draw a few drips from your main cloud. You can make them curly, you can make them straight, whatever. Obviously, this does not look like a very realistic blood splatter, but we're going to change that. Now come in with your eraser and start making these drips look more realistic in shape. You've got to take your time with the shapes. It's the most important thing. Make sure your eraser's on 100% opacity. As I said, the most important thing about this whole tutorial is taking your time with shape and shading. So I'm doing it section by section. I find that easier than zooming out and doing the whole shape. So whenever you need to paint back in, just go back to that red colour, the light red, and paint back in. So I want to make it look more droplet-like. And I really took my time at getting the edges nice and smooth and exactly where I wanted them. The shape of this is a big part of making it look realistic. Now I've sped up the rest of the process because it's relatively the same as what I did on the right of the picture, but I wanted to show you the process to see how I got to my final shape. And remember, blood splatters aren't uniform. They're not going to have exactly the same size droplet everywhere and the same pattern in between and the same edges the whole way around. So you've got to make it random so it doesn't look like you've drawn the blood splatter. And say this blood splatter was on a wall, all the blood would pool to the bottom because of gravity. So this is why the droplets at the bottom are so big. Try to make it as realistic as possible shape-wise. So obviously there wouldn't just be a big splodge of blood, there'd be gaps in it. So this is why I'm taking out big sections and stuff like that. It's already starting to look a lot more realistic than it did at the beginning. So now what I'm going to do is paint in really thin bits of blood coming off from the main source. And this is because blood splatter isn't just one solid bit of blood. Little bits come off of it, and there's little droplets on the wall and everything. So to make it look more realistic, we've got to add those tiny details in. You can do as many or as little as you want of these, but it does start making it look a lot more realistic. When you have less, it looks like you made a mistake or it's very cartoony. So if you start putting more in, it's going to look like it's meant to be there on purpose. Now the ones that are hanging down off a section are obviously going to be bigger because the gravity's pulled them down and made them drip down the wall and things like that. Try and think about that sort of thing when you're drawing them in, and it will help your drawing to look more realistic. So here's what I've got to so far. Now if I was doing this not for a tutorial, I would have added more little bits of the main source, but this is just an example. Now we take our darker red colour and we paint on the inside of what we've already drawn, and we leave a tiny bit of a gap around the side. And this will make the blood look more curved and 3D. It's best to make a selection of the blood you already have. Just use the quick select tool, it will pick it up because it's so contrasty with the white. This will allow you to go right up to the edge in some cases, and you won't have, you'll keep the shape of the blood. Most of the time we don't need to go to the edge, but on these droplets you will on the big ones. But it's literally just keeping that thin border most of the way around, and it'll look more three-dimensional, which is exactly what we want, because at the moment it looks very much like a drawing. So I'm just taking little bits of the dark red off in some areas just to make it look more believable, and I'm adding a couple of spots and dots here and there because it was looking too unrealistic and I needed some splatter. So I'm starting with the light red again, and then I'll go in with the dark red after. And I'm sorry the recording's a bit jumpy, it's just my laptop messing up again. So go and select one of the spots and you just do the dark red towards the bottom and leave a tiny bit of light red at the top. It might be easier if you select all the little spots with the quick selection tool and then paint them all in. It saves you having to deselect and select again. So the shape's looking relatively good. I like the shading, it's starting to look a bit less 2D, but the thing that will really make it look realistic, the most important step, is dodging and burning. So we're just going to go over to the dodge and burn tool on the side, and we'll start off with the burn because it's easier to do. Now, as I said in the beginning, the blood is going to pull to the bottom of the sauce. So that's always going to be the darker bit because it's got more blood. It's got a thicker bit of blood. So all the bottom of these drips are going to be really, really dark. And it will look weird at the start, and it will look weird whilst you're zoomed in and stuff, but when you zoom out it really does work. And you want to leave a tiny bit of lighter red because it will make the blood look curved and like a puddle instead of just flat on the wall with a shadow. Lighter colours stand up and darker colours look below things. So where the lighter colour's in the middle, it will make the middle of that droplet stand up and make it look curved. It's already starting to look a lot more 3D. And then you just want to take this burning to some of the curves in the main sauce to make them look indented and stuff like that. And don't forget the droplets on the side, because I've done that before. It looks unrealistic. A lot of the droplets will be quite dark because they're puddles of blood. It's already looking a lot more 3D than it did before. And the shadow on the curves really help it. So all these little indentations I'm burning because they would be lower down than the rest of the blood. They'd catch a shadow if a light was on top of it. So that's looking pretty good, and you could stop there, entirely up to you, but I chose to carry on, try and make it look a bit more realistic. So I increased the burn on some of the indentations so they didn't all look the same, because it was looking a bit samey. Obviously some would be catching more shadow than others. Then I started adding shadow with the burn tool to make the blood look less even and look a bit mottled. And this is entirely up to you, but I prefer how it looks. I think it looks more realistic. But if your blood was on the floor, it'd be a lot flatter, just because I've done one that would be on the wall, so it wouldn't all be glossy and flat. Just burn random sections of the main block of blood. And that is really starting to look realistic for us. The edge is funny because I've got marching ants on. There you go, I take my selection off. So you can see it's looking a lot better than it did at the beginning. Then I'm going in with one of these spatter brushes. They come with Photoshop, so everyone can use them. Don't need to make your own brush. You can if you want, but other people, it's fine, it's there for you. And I'm just going to add tiny bits of highlight onto the main source to make it look, again, less flat. And this isn't all the highlighting we're going to do, but it helps to make the blood look different. Now I think I chose 24 spatter, and you can see that it looks okay, but it looks a bit uniform and harsh. So what I'm going to do is go into the brush panel, and I'm going to change the shape dynamics of it. So the brush panel is just on the side, the little pot with the brushes in, and I'm going to change the shape dynamics, change the percentages bit, so it makes it more random. I'm going to have the top and the third one at 100, and the bottom one at 10, and then angle jitter at about 50, because 100 was a bit too high for me. And then what you'll get is more random shapes, like some will be flat and some will be round and stuff like that, so that your highlights won't look uniform. You can see I've got a flat brush here. So that's looking more 3D and contoured, I'd say. Like the bit on the right looks really high compared to the shadows around it and stuff like that. Now what I'm going to do is on a new layer, just make a new layer with pure white, I'm just going to paint in little semicircles where highlights would be. And for now, do not worry about the shape. I'm just literally working out where I'm going to place them. Placement is really important, and then I'll edit the shape to make it look perfect. Now if you really wanted to focus on the shape of these highlights, you could do each one separately on layers so that you can liquefy them or warp them by themselves to not affect all the others. But for a tutorial, I'm just showing you how to add them in and how to make them look more realistic. So I've painted in all my white sections. Just going to go in with my eraser and make those shapes a lot better, a lot smoother. Obviously the highlights are way too big at the moment, so I'll reduce them down, but it was easier for me to map them out first. So you can see all my highlights, but obviously they're way too harsh. Well, we're going to reduce the opacity, and we're going to put a Gaussian blur on it so it's not harsh lines. You can choose how much you blur it, no set number. Now I wanted my blood to be darker, so I duplicated my blood layer, set it on multiply, and then I just reduced the opacity of that. Sorry, because it's jumpy you can't see what I did. Now this is my final product. I'm really happy with it. It looks a lot better than what it started with, and if I take even more time on it, it's going to look even better. And this is literally just painting. I haven't taken sources from Google and layered them in and overlay and stuff like that. It's literally just painting. So super simple and possible for everyone. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Hope it comes in handy. I know Halloween's super close. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye!